Wang Xuan entered Longmao Square and was trapped inside. After he finally left, it turned out this is already the last building on Earth. I have completed these 7 works. Interested friends can go and take a look. Keywords of the novel. The last building on Earth has no pop-ups, the last building on Earth. Download the complete set of TXT, and read the latest chapters of The Last Building on Earth. Chapter 1. Longmao Square. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Longmao Square. A new energy car parked on the -2nd floor of the underground parking lot at Longmao Square. The door of the co-pilot was opened, and a young man named Wang Xuan came down. The driver's name is Zhao Lei, wearing glasses, with fair skin and a refined demeanor. His squinting eyes always make him smile. There are 3 girls in the back of the car who are of the same age as them. Wang Xuan and them are college classmates and good friends. Taking advantage of the weekend holiday, the 5 of them arranged an outdoor barbecue together and planned to go to Longmao Square to buy barbecue ingredients first. It's getting late, you guys hurry up. Zhao Lei couldn't help but shout when he saw 3 women still dragging around after getting off the car. One of the chubby women among the 3 gave him a pale glance and said, "What's the rush? It's not yet 10 o'clock. When we buy everything, we can go to the barbecue place by 10:30 at most. It's just right time." This chubby woman's name is Wang Qin, with shoulder-length short hair. She is holding a bag of potato chips that have almost bottomed out, and there are tiny chips on the corners of her mouth. She has already killed 2 bags of potato chips along the way until now. Wang Qin has a strong personality, and when Zhao Lei saw that she had a headache, she didn't dare to say anything more. Wang Xuan and Zhao Lei walked ahead, with 3 women behind, holding hands and discussing a recently popular TV drama, whether the male lead was good looking or the male lead was more handsome. The 5 of them quickly found the elevator leading directly to the mall. Wang Xuan pressed the button but found no response. Is the elevator broken? Zhao Lei also pressed it twice without any response. I think so, Wang Xuan replied casually, ready to find the nearest staircase to go up. Fortunately, the mall is on the 1st floor, and the stairs are also very close. Zhang Qianwen, from the 3rd Girls' High School, complained with a face full of grievances, "What bad luck. We're going up there now." Zhang Qianwen is very thin and small, with a height of less than 1.6 meters and a weight of no more than 80 pounds. Her skin is slightly black, and she has several acne on both cheeks. She looks like a bamboo pole supporting her head, showing a somewhat underdeveloped appearance. Among the 3 girls, Wang Qin and Zhang Qianwen are both unattractive, except for Gu Manyao, who is very beautiful. She is moderately plump and thin, with fair and beautiful skin. Under her long eyelashes, her eyes sparkle with radiance, and Gu Pan shines brightly. Since they cannot take the elevator, the 5 of them can only find the stairs to climb up. Wang Xuan quickly discovered another elevator, but it also stopped and could not be used. A few minutes passed quickly, and the 5 people saw only rows of parked cars and huge load-bearing pillars, without noticing any stairs or exits leading up to the basement level. It's strange, why do you seem to keep circling here? The person in charge of the parking lot doesn't even know how to get a sign. Zhao Lei shook his head, showing a somewhat speechless expression. Wang Xuan looked at the several load-bearing pillars facing him, all marked with the capital letter E, representing the E area of the underground 2nd floor parking lot. The underground parking lot on the 3rd floor of Longmao Square is divided into 12 zones, including A, B, C, D, E, F, with 4 zones on each floor. The 2nd underground floor is divided into E zone, F zone, G zone, and H zone, each with 88 parking spaces. Their cars are parked in F zone, and now they are located in E zone. Wang Xuan's eyebrows furrowed slightly. Just a few minutes ago, they kept circling between these areas, and theoretically, they should have found the exit no matter what. However, they never found any entrance or exit, nor did they see the stairs. Wang Xuan suddenly noticed that Zhao Lei's face was pale beside him, staring fixedly at the ground in front of him, with a look on his face as if he had seen a ghost. "Zhao Lei, what's wrong?" Wang Xuan was slightly surprised and thought that Zhao Lei was feeling unwell. He immediately reached out to help him. "I'm fine." Zhao Lei wiped off the weak sweat on his forehead and said, "Wang Xuan, Gu Manyao, everyone come and take a look at this." As he spoke, he extended his finger and pointed to the numbers on the ground in front of the 4 parked cars in this row. Wang Xuan, Gu Manyao, Zhang Qianwen, and Wang Qin all crowded over and looked closely at the ground. These 4 cars have numbers written on the ground in front of them, namely E006, E007, E008, and E009, indicating that these 4 cars are parked in parking spaces 6, 7, 8, and 9 in Zone E. "Is there anything wrong with this?" "Zhao Lei, what are you playing with?" Wang Qin put potato chips in her mouth and looked at Zhao Lei with a dissatisfied expression. Wang Xuan also had some confusion. He not only carefully looked at the numbers on the ground, but also at the 4 cars parked in front of him, 2 black sedans, 1 white off-road vehicle, and 1 red hatchback sedan. He didn't see any problem. Seeing several people looking at him with confusion on their faces, Zhao Lei licked his lips before saying, "I drove here once last Sunday and parked my car at the E007 location. I remember very clearly driving down the slope at the entrance, and there happened to be an empty parking spot on the edge of the slope, which is the 7th parking spot in E area. I parked my car here, and when I got off the car, I could look up and see the slope at the entrance." Zhao Lei looked up as he spoke, looking at a wall not far away from him. He raised his finger and said, "If I remember correctly, this direction should be the entrance slope." "How? Why has it become a wall now?" Wang Xuan and Gu Manyao listened in their ears and looked at each other. Zhang Qianwen shrank her shoulders and said, "Zhao Lei, you are really wicked. This place is already a bit dark and gloomy, and you still want to deliberately say that to scare people." She didn't believe what Zhao Lei said, thinking that Zhao Lei was intentionally trying to scare them. Zhao Lei shook his head and said, "I didn't scare you. What I said is true." Wang Xuan looked at Zhao Lei's expression and didn't look like he was lying. He had been walking for 10 minutes without seeing the exit, and he had already felt something was wrong. Now he heard Zhao Lei say that the area that was supposed to be the entrance slope had turned into a wall. Although he couldn't understand what was going on, his sense of unease grew stronger and stronger. "Zhao Lei, did you remember wrong?" Wang Qin finally stopped eating potato chips. "I don't know either." Zhao Lei showed a dejected expression. He could be certain that he remembered correctly, but what he saw now deviated from what he remembered, and the only explanation could be that he remembered wrong. Wang Xiandao said, "Let's go back to the car, Zhao Lei. You should remember the way you drove in. We'll drive out the way we got in." Due to a power outage, the underground parking lot on the 2nd floor appeared very dark. Previously, the 5 people had been talking and laughing all the way, which was not a big deal. However, after searching for the exit for so long, they couldn't find it. Coupled with Zhao Lei's words just now, although they didn't know the truth, they all felt inexplicable unease in their hearts. As a result, they began to feel that this place appeared gloomy and gloomy. Zhang Qianwen had the least courage and felt a bit scared. She hugged Gu Manyao's arm beside her and Wang Qin looked at Wang Xuan, "Just drive out. Don't buy barbecue." Wang Xuan shook his head and said, "Let's drive out first. Besides, there is also a parking spot on the roadside, so you don't have to park here." Upon hearing Wang Xuan's words, everyone stopped talking and immediately accelerated their pace towards the F area where they had just parked. The 5 people quickly passed through Zone E and their car was parked at parking space 66 in Zone F. According to the numbers on the ground, it was not difficult to find parking space F066. As soon as Zhao Lei entered Zone F, he started pressing the remote key and immediately saw the front and rear lights of a car flickering twice not far away. Found it. Zhao Lei immediately accelerated his speed and walked towards the direction where the lights had just flashed before and after. A few people had just taken a few steps when Gu Manyao let out a moan and suddenly stopped. The new book has been officially uploaded. We hope everyone can collect and vote for it. Thank you. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Strange Shadow. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Strange Shadow. Wang Xuan also stopped closely and saw a white off-road vehicle blocking in front of them. The off-road vehicle collided with a load-bearing pillar, causing severe damage to the front of the vehicle. The front windshield was shattered, and the airbags inside were ejected. The glass on the side of the driver's cab was also shattered, and several people could see clearly. There was blood splattered on it, and no one could be seen. It was unclear if there were any casualties. This seems to be a very serious car accident, less than 10 meters away from where their car was parked. However, when they parked 10 minutes ago, they didn't see this accident. Is this just a recent accident? It's just such a violent impact, why didn't they hear any movement? The doubts in their hearts grew bigger and bigger, and among the three women, Gu Manyao was the boldest. She took a few steps forward to see clearly. Wang Xuan immediately stepped forward and blocked her. He felt that everything happening here today was becoming increasingly strange, and he inexplicably worried that Gu Manyao might be in danger if she approached again. However, he couldn't say for sure what kind of danger it would be. Don't look, let's get in the car first, and then report to the police that there was a car accident here. Gu Manyao glanced at Wang Xuan and saw his solemn expression, so she nodded. The inexplicable atmosphere of unease grew stronger and stronger. Even Wang Qin seemed to have a premonition and didn't eat her potato chips anymore. The five people avoided the off-road vehicle in front of them and walked towards Zhao Lei's car parked 10 meters away. Wang Xuan took out his phone to prepare for the alarm, and as he bypassed the off-road vehicle, he couldn't help but turn his head to look at the co-pilot of the off-road vehicle. At this glance, he suddenly felt his sweat and hair stand on end. The door of the co-pilot of the off-road vehicle was open, and a person covered in blood fell down in a head-to-toe position, with his body twisted irregularly. His legs were resting on the co-pilot's seat, but his head was stuck under the car. Half of his head was gone, and white material flowed faintly from the ground. This person's posture is very eerie, with his back clothes and flesh torn apart like claws, blood and flesh blurred, and bones faintly exposed inside, as if he had been attacked by a fierce beast. Zhang Qianwen followed closely and couldn't help but scream out loud. Her face turned pale with fear. It was the first time she had seen such a bloody scene of her age. Zhao Lei, Gu Manyao, and Wang Qin all stopped, and everyone saw this bloody and terrifying scene with shock on their faces. Wang Qin just glanced and turned her head away, then with a "wow" sound, she spat out all the potato chips she had just eaten. Call the police quickly. Zhao Lei reacted and was busy taking his phone from his pants pocket. Let's get on the car quickly. Zhang Qianwen's voice was filled with a hint of crying. She felt scared and had been circling around the somewhat dark underground parking lot for about 10 minutes without finding her way, feeling a bit uneasy. Now, suddenly seeing this terrible car accident and the death, she was extremely scared. As she spoke, she ran towards the place where Zhao Lei's car was parked. A few people were all a bit scared in their hearts. They didn't dare to stay and carefully examined, accelerating their steps to follow Zhang Qianwen towards Zhao Lei's car. No signal. Zhao Lei took out his phone and realized that there was no signal on it, and he couldn't even make an alarm call. Wang Xuan held his phone and his face looked a bit ugly. Just as he was about to call the police, he found that there was no signal on his phone. Although he was not timid, the feeling of unease in his heart grew stronger and stronger at this moment, especially the twisted and eerie body. The scar on the back did not seem to be from the impact, but rather seemed to have been attacked by some large beast, which filled him with unease. Thinking of the beast, he couldn't help but turn back and take another look. Suddenly, he noticed two green and sparkling lights appearing inside the seemingly dark off-road vehicle, like the eyes of a wolf. They appeared inside the vehicle at some point, staring at them from a distance. Wang Xuan's mind trembled with intelligence, and his whole body was covered in sweat and hair for an instant. "Get in the car quickly!" Wang Xuan almost instinctively shouted at the few people, accelerating rapidly towards the co-pilot of Zhao Lei's car. Zhao Lei and the others were not foolish either. They all felt that something was wrong and were afraid. Suddenly, they heard Wang Xuan shouting so loudly. Although they didn't know the reason, their hearts shook and they understood that something bad must have happened. They all accelerated their speed and ran towards the car. Wang Xuan was the first to open the passenger door, sit inside, and look at the off-road vehicle again. He saw a blurry black shadow swaying slightly from inside the off-road vehicle's compartment, but due to the dim light and distance, he did not fully see the true appearance of this blurry black shadow. He could only vaguely confirm that there was something terrifying hidden inside the off-road vehicle's compartment. Zhao Lei, Gu Manyao, Zhang Qianwen, and Wang Qin all boarded the train. "Everyone close the car doors and don't open the windows. Zhao Lei, drive away quickly. There is something hidden in the car, and it is possible that the person was bitten to death by it." Wang Xuan closed the car door and felt a sense of security as he sat in the car. Zhao Lei nodded nervously and fastened his seatbelt, then started the car. Just then, there was a sudden thud and a sound of something falling on top of the carriage. The sound rang out, and all 5 people in the car tightened their hearts, looking up at the carriage. Wang Xuan remained calm and shouted, "Drive." Zhao Lei immediately stepped on the accelerator, grabbed the steering wheel, and drove forward, wanting to follow the original path to leave here. At this moment, from above the front windshield, a black shadow suddenly slid down the glass, and a black shadow hit Zhao Lei heavily on the windshield in front of him, making a huge and muffled sound. Suddenly, Zhao Lei didn't expect a huge black shadow to appear on the glass in front of him. He instinctively let out a scream, pressed the accelerator too hard, and the steering wheel in his hand turned slowly. The car couldn't fully turn around and almost rushed out diagonally, hitting a parked car on the other side of the oncoming aisle. With a loud bang, several people exclaimed in shock. 5 people in the car, including Zhao Lei, fastened their seat belts. Fortunately, Wang Xuan reacted quickly and grabbed the handle above the car window, barely stabilizing his body. The 3 women sitting behind, Gu Manyao, were not so lucky. They didn't understand what was happening, but felt a huge force pushing their bodies forward. Gu Manyao collided with the back of the seat where Wang Xuan was sitting, while Zhang Qianwen, who was sitting in the middle, was the unlucky one to hit the roof with one head. Wang Xuan saw that under the tremendous impact force, the black figure sliding off the windshield was thrown out and instantly disappeared from his view. Zhao Lei also saw it, his face full of shock. "Reverse quickly." Wang Xuan was calmer than him. Zhao Lei came to his senses from his panic and was busy pushing the gear lever to reverse. He stepped on the gas pedal and connected his hands to turn the steering wheel, trying to tilt the car back to the right. He was originally a beginner and had not received his driver's license for a long time. Now, in a panic, the steering wheel was turned in the wrong direction. The new book is starting, with 2 chapters updated temporarily every day. Young seedlings, I hope everyone can continue reading. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Terror Monsters. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Terror Monsters. The car overturned in an S shape, and the rear of the car was thrown to the left, hitting the load-bearing pillar at the left rear. The trunk immediately sank in. Almost at the same moment, Wang Xuan noticed a red sedan suddenly appearing on the other side of the load-bearing column, which was colliding at an extremely fast speed. Suddenly, the few people in the car didn't understand what was happening. Wang Xuan couldn't figure out why such a speeding car suddenly appeared on the other side of this load-bearing pillar. He could only instinctively grab the handle above the window with both hands, support his feet forward, and tighten his whole body, trying to stabilize his body. The suddenly rushing red car collided firmly with the side and rear of their car. With a loud bang, the side and rear of their car immediately collapsed, and the piercing sound of shattered glass rang out. Wang Qin, who was the first to be affected, opened her mouth, and her internal organs were hit. A stream of blood spurted out, causing the car to be overturned. The few people inside the car only felt spinning in shock. Wang Xuan tightly grasped the handle and propped his body down with his arms, transforming into a head-down and foot-up position. The three women sitting in the back row were rolling in a ball, with various postures. Wang Xuan only felt a hot thing flowing down his forehead. He understood that he had broken his forehead, and that the blood flowing out was fresh. His mind was buzzing, and his whole body seemed to be scattered, with pain everywhere. He didn't know how serious his injury was, so he could only barely open his eyes, and through the car window, his vision blurred as he saw the red sedan that had knocked over their car also come to a stop. Then he saw that the driver's door was opened, and a delicate black high-heeled shoe protruded from it, stepping on the ground. On the high-heeled shoe was a beautiful leg wearing black stockings. Wang Xuan's mind was still a bit confused, only vaguely guessing that it might be the owner of the red sedan, as if he was getting off the car to check the situation. Then he heard the voice of the owner of the red sedan, with a hint of panic in his voice. "I bumped into someone else's car, what should I do now? I was just about to step on the brake, but I accidentally stepped on the wrong one due to nervousness." Upon hearing this, Wang Xuan immediately understood. The female driver nervously used the accelerator as a brake. No wonder there were cars rushing out at such a fast speed in this underground parking lot, knocking over their cars. He couldn't see the appearance of the female driver clearly. From his current perspective, he could only see a pair of slender thighs wearing black stockings and high heels, listening to the panicked voice of a woman. She nervously took out her phone while muttering to herself, wanting to make a call. "But I can see very clearly that there is no car ahead, so where did this car suddenly come from? How could there be no movement at all?" Wang Xuan widened his eyes and, through the cracked windshield, saw a black shadow rushing towards him from afar at an extremely fast speed. This time he saw clearly, and the black shadow was covered in black scales all over, resembling a human-like beast. It was the monster that had been thrown out of their car before, and now it was the female driver who was the target of its attack. Not good. Wang Xuan couldn't help but shout at the female driver, who could only see her lower body through the window glass, "Get in the car quickly, it's dangerous." He shouted loudly, and the female driver heard it. She was slightly stunned, but had not yet reacted. When she turned around and looked in the direction where Wang Xuan was, she suddenly saw a black shadow rushing towards her. A blood bowl opened its mouth, revealing 2 rows of sharp teeth inside. The woman let out a scream full of fear, which then turned into a mournful scream. Upon hearing this scream, Wang Xuan felt a chill in his heart. He saw a mobile phone fall to the ground, and the female driver who had been hit by a black shadow fell to the ground. Wang Xuan felt very uncomfortable squeezing into the overturned carriage with his head and feet down. From his current perspective, he could only see a pair of thighs in black stockings vigorously kicking on the ground, and a high-heeled shoe was kicked off, landing at the edge of the window in front of him. There was blood oozing from a large beach on the ground, and the female driver did not die immediately. Instead, her legs were constantly twitching, and her throat was bitten open. She could no longer speak and could only make a bubbly sound. Zhao Lei's car was overturned, and all 5 people inside the car were hit. Wang Qin was the first to be hit, the most serious, and his mouth was covered in blood. Wang Xuan and Zhao Lei were relatively lucky, and they only suffered some minor injuries without any major problems. A few people were desperately trying to adjust their posture inside the car. Zhao Lei unfastened his seatbelt and originally wanted to try to open the car door and climb out, but he didn't want to hear a scream. He also saw the scene of the female driver being attacked by a dark monster, and his hair was on end. He was trembling all over and didn't dare to go out again. Wang Xuan was cold all over, watching the monster pounce on the female driver. After the female driver stopped screaming, he quickly turned around and his eyes, which were faintly green, stared at the few people in his car before pouncing. Now he finally saw the appearance of this monster clearly, covered in black scales, with a wolf-headed ape body and eerie green light in his eyes. It was an unknown monster he had never seen before. "Don't open the car door," Wang Xuan shouted, looking at the fierce and terrifying appearance of this monster. It was not something they could deal with barehanded. The only hope was to hide inside this car, hoping that this monster wouldn't damage it. Unexpectedly, he just made a sound and suddenly realized that the window glass on the side where Wang Xuan was located had been shattered due to the impact. The monster extended a scaly ape claw and with a flick, it tore open the shards of the window glass. This monster was extremely fast and immediately crawled down this car window. 5 people crowded into this carriage, which was quite narrow. This monster was not small in size and it was not easy to completely squeeze in. It opened its bloody mouth and wanted to bite Wang Xuan's neck, as it couldn't fully squeeze in. This bite bit her shoulder. Wang Xuan was already seriously injured and had a slow reaction. Now, squeezed into this carriage, it was even harder to dodge. He watched as the monster's bloody mouth reached in and let out a scream, only feeling a sharp pain in his shoulder, which had already been bitten. Out of her survival instinct, she used both hands and feet, struggling desperately. Wang Xuan in front turned over and crawled backwards, wanting to help Wang Xuan. Squeezing together with Wang Xuan, Zhang Qianwen's face turned pale with fear. She had the least courage and kept screaming, but Gu Manyao had more courage than her. Seeing Wang Xuan in danger, she kicked and kicked the monster, trying to kick it out, otherwise it would rush into the carriage and they would all die. The monster bit onto Wang Xuan's shoulder, but couldn't fully squeeze in. The carriage was too small, and a few people crowded together with the monster, making it unable to dodge. Gu Manyao kicked it in the head several times, one of which hit one of its eyes. The kicked eye immediately closed, and the kick was not light, even tears were kicked out. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. White Scales, for follow.up reading, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 White Scales, for follow.up reading, it had a fierce glare in its other eye and a wolf-like roar in its throat. It was angered by Gu Manyao and released Wang Xuan's biting shoulder, forcefully squeezing in half of its body before biting towards Gu Manyao. Wang Xuan also crawled over and saw the monster's big mouth biting Gu Manyao. Without much thought, he extended his arms and hugged the monster's neck from behind. This monster was hugged by Wang Xuan's neck and only bit Gu Manyao's collar with one bite. With a hiss, it tore off a large piece of her collar, revealing her snow-white neck. Feeling the foul smell emanating from the monster's nostrils spraying onto her neck, Gu Manyao's face turned pale with no trace of blood, and her whole body trembled slightly with fear. If it weren't for Wang Xuan suddenly hugging this monster from behind, her neck would have been bitten by the monster's big mouth. Wang Xuan let out a low growl in his mouth, his teeth tightly clenched together, and his arms exerted all his strength, tightly gripping the slightly slender neck of the monster. The monster realized something was wrong and began to struggle, trying to shake off Wang Xuan. If it were in an open place, there was still hope to shake off Wang Xuan with its strength, but now it and everyone are squeezed together in this carriage, squeezing together. It has all its strength to exert, let alone shake off Wang Xuan. Wang Xuan wrapped his arms around the neck of the monster, not daring to relax at all. He felt the monster struggling desperately, so he propped his legs on the top of the carriage and pressed it down with the weight of his body. Gu Manyao stepped forward and helped Wang Xuan suppress the monster, making it unable to break free. Zhao Lei also followed closely and crawled over, pressing down on the lower body of the monster from behind. A few people were all pressing on it, and Wang Xuan tightly hugged its neck. His face turned red due to excessive force, and he felt that the monster's struggle was becoming weaker and weaker. A large pool of blood flowed out from its mouth, nose, eyes, and ears. Wang Xuan dared not let go until the monster was completely motionless. He still held onto the monster's neck tightly and couldn't let go. He gasped heavily, feeling his arms weak and his whole body as if he had collapsed. At this moment, I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my right palm, as if it had been cut open by something. Suddenly, Wang Xuan couldn't help but snort and instinctively let go, only to find that there was a unique white scale in the row of black scales under the monster's neck. This monster is covered in black scales all over its body, except for a white scale in the center of its neck, about the size of a fingernail on its thumb, which is very conspicuous. Previously, due to an angle issue, Wang Xuan had not been able to notice this white scale. Now, in excruciating pain, he noticed that this white scale had risen upwards at some point, with sharp edges like knives, stained with blood. His right palm was cut open by this raised white scale, with a wound about 4 to 5 centimeters long, and half of the white scale was trapped inside. Under the pain of eating, Wang Xuan withdrew his hand, and the white scale suddenly fell off the monster's neck like a living creature, wriggling inward along the wound in his palm. He immediately felt the pain and swelling of the wound on his right palm, and was greatly surprised. He was busy reaching out his left hand to remove the white scales that had penetrated into his flesh. The white scales were originally only half exposed outside, but when he noticed them, they wriggled and disappeared into the flesh of his palm. He was covered in sweat and hair, and he suspected that it was not white scales, but a parasitic creature that looked like scales and was now infiltrating his body. This indescribable fear immediately flashed through his mind, accompanied by terrifying scenes of his body being eaten up by parasites. This made him extremely fearful. He could clearly feel the scale in his right palm slowly wriggling and twisting in the palm, swollen and uncomfortable. He wanted to use his left hand to open the wound in the palm and remove the scale, not wanting something even more terrifying to happen. The wound in his palm, which was as open as a baby's mouth, was rapidly healing at a visible speed to the naked eye. In just a blink of an eye, the originally cracked wound stuck together, forming a layer of flesh film and a white line on the surface. Quickly, the white line also disappeared, and the palm of his right hand returned to its original state, without even a trace of scar visible. However, the swelling sensation in the palm of his right hand still existed, and he could clearly feel the presence of foreign objects inside. He looked in his eyes, dumbfounded. He thought the white scales looked like something terrifying parasitic, but what happened now made him dumbfounded. What kind of parasite can instantly heal his wound? Is it not a parasite, but rather a treasure that can accelerate wound healing? Wang Xuan's heart was pounding wildly. Looking up in front of him, he saw Gu Manyao panting and his eyes looking at him, while Zhang Qianwen opened his mouth wide, with lingering palpitations on his face. Wang Qin pressed on her shoulder, which had been bitten with several blood holes, and her mouth was making a painful sound. Until Wang Xiansong let go of the monster's neck, it was limp and motionless. Several people in the carriage breathed a sigh of relief, finally confirming that the monster was dead, with a feeling of survival in their hearts. The scene just now when the white scale entered Wang Xian's palm, the other few did not see it. Zhao Lei was trying to open the car door. Fortunately, although the car was knocked over, the 2 doors on the passenger side can still be opened. Zhao Lei and Gu Manyao opened the car door one after another and crawled out, while Zhang Qianwen followed closely behind Gu Manyao and crawled out. Wang Xian's mind was filled with thoughts about the white scale in his right palm, feeling a bit lost. He kept hearing Zhao Lei calling his name before regaining consciousness and rushing to climb out. Later, he and Gu Manyao helped Wang Qin, who was seriously injured, almost dragged her out. Wang Qin's left shoulder was drenched in blood, and the monster had bitten several blood holes. Half of her clothes were stained red with blood, causing her face to look very ugly and her body to appear weak. After several people dragged her out, they saw Wang Qin's appearance and were all panicked. Zhao Lei took out his phone again, but there was still no signal. Wang Xian, what should we do now? Zhao Lei had no idea and hoped that Wang Xian would come up with an idea. Gu Manyao helped Wang Qin compress the wound on her shoulder and asked Zhang Qianwen to help her bandage the wound for Wang Qin. They don't have bandages for emergency bandages on hand, so they can only tear a coat into strips of cloth and perform simple bandages. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Chaos of Time and Space. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Chaos of Time and Space. Gu Manyao bandaged Wang Qin while looking up at Wang Xian and Zhao Lei and said, Wang Qin's injury is not mild. She needs to be taken to the hospital immediately, otherwise her wound is easily infected. Zhao Lei's face turned ugly and he said, but now that the car has been knocked over, how can we get to the hospital? We can't get through the phone, and we can't find the exit. Zhang Qianwen still looked frightened and said, why are there such terrifying beasts in this parking lot? Did they escape from the zoo? Zhao Lei glanced at her and said, have you ever seen such a beast in the zoo? We don't even know where it is now. It's clearly an underground parking lot in Longmao Square, but we've been searching for a while but haven't found an exit. What are you saying about this? Gu Manyao said, where did that red car just appear? When Wang Xian heard Gu Manyao talk about the red car, his heart suddenly moved. He bypassed Zhao Lei's overturned car and immediately saw the red car with its front sunken. He saw the car's door open and a large pool of blood on the ground. He saw a woman wearing a red dress lying on her back in this big pool of blood, her eyes wide open, her throat torn open, and she had no breath left. Wang Xian felt an discomfort in his throat after just one glance, and his whole body felt chills like an electric shock. Although he was not timid, it was the first time in his life that he had witnessed such a bloody scene with his own eyes. His scalp tingled and he dared not look back. He immediately sat in the driver's seat and found the car key in the car, trying to start it. I hope the car is not damaged. Wang Xian silently thought to himself, gripping the steering wheel with both hands, stepping on the brake, and successfully starting the car, reversing it 2 meters back. Zhao Lei and his companions also heard the sound of the car starting and saw Wang Xian driving the red sedan. They immediately rushed over. Wang Xian stopped the car and got off the lane again. Quick, this car can still be driven. Let's drive this car. As he spoke, he ran over again and together with Zhao Lei, they helped and lifted Wang Qin into the car. This time, Zhao Lei sat in the passenger seat and Wang Xian drove. Closing the car door, the few of them felt slightly calm. Wang Xian's driving skills were not much better than Zhao Lei, but he was much calmer than Zhao Lei. He carefully tilted the car back and prepared to turn around and leave. He remembered just now that the female driver was driving this red sedan and turning from the load-bearing pillar here, hitting Zhao Lei's car. There should be a way out on the other side of this load-bearing pillar, but when he carefully turned the car around, he found that the other side of this load-bearing pillar was filled with cars. Behind these cars was a wall, and there was no way for a car to come out. Zhao Lei immediately noticed the problem, widened his eyes, and exclaimed in shock, what's going on? I remember this car rushed out from here and collided with my car, but why is it a wall here? If this car was originally parked here, there should be an empty parking space here. It's impossible for all the parking spaces to be parked, so where did this car come from? The 5 people in the car were all looking at each other, unable to speak. Wang Xian grabbed the steering wheel and stared at the row of cars ahead and the wall in the distance, slowly saying, there is only one possibility. We are no longer in the underground parking lot of Longmao Square now. The time and space here are chaotic. I remember this woman got off the car to check the situation before the attack and said a sentence. She said she saw very clearly that there was no car ahead. Where did this car suddenly come from? How could there be no movement? At that time, I didn't think much about the meaning of this sentence, only thought she hit the excuse we said. Now, thinking about it, maybe she didn't lie. For her, the car may have suddenly appeared in front of her, and it was only in her panic that she mistakenly used the accelerator as the brake, causing our car to crash. Zhao Lei looked at Wang Xuan and said in a daze, Wang Xuan, do you mean we crossed over while driving, and this woman also crossed over while driving? We happened to cross over together and collided. He often reads novels about the protagonist's time travel, so when Wang Xuan said this, he immediately thought of those time travel novels. Zhang Qianwen's face was full of fear, and she was about to cry. Isn't crossing time all fake? How could we cross time? Let's not go barbecue anymore. I want to go home, Zhao Lei. It's all your fault for going barbecue. Wang Xuan listened to Zhang Qianwen's crying voice and felt a little annoyed when she blamed Zhao Lei. He said, stop crying. Crying and complaining are useless now. These are just speculations. Maybe we are still in the parking lot of Longmao Square. Anyway, let's see if we can find a way out first. While speaking, I drove around from the other side and drove forward between the two rows of parked cars facing me. Gu Manyao gently comforted Zhang Qianwen. Although Wang Qin was seriously injured and her painful face was twisted, she gritted her teeth and remained silent, showing much stronger strength than Zhang Qianwen. After discovering that there was no way here, Wang Xian's emotions plummeted to a low point. From Zhao Lei driving into this underground parking lot, all five of them experienced after getting off the car. Looking back now, there were various anomalies, such as how a parking lot of this size suddenly lost power, no one came to repair it for so long, and for example, they walked for 10 minutes but couldn't find a way out. It was just that they didn't take it seriously at the time, and no one thought deeply. All the experiences he has gone through now tell him that everything is abnormal, and they are afraid of encountering unimaginable situations. Zhao Lei sat in the passenger seat with straight eyes and murmured, it's not wrong. We're afraid we've really crossed over, otherwise how could such a terrifying monster suddenly appear? I've never heard of any animals that grow like this since I'm so big. Even if they do, they should still live in some primitive forests. How could they appear in the underground parking lot of this lush square? It's done. Do you think there's more than that monster here? When this sentence was spoken, everyone in the car felt a chill in their hearts. Zhang Qianwen was finally persuaded by Gu Manyao to stop crying. With Zhao Lei's words, her face, which was already full of fear, appeared even more frightened and immediately cried again. Wang Qin shouted weakly, Zhao Lei, don't talk nonsense like a crow. Gu Manyao suddenly said, there is a certain possibility of what Zhao Lei said. We have to prepare for the worst. Zhao Lei immediately nodded and said, yes, everyone is in the car to see if there are any weapons or similar. As he spoke, he opened the storage box in front of the passenger seat and found scattered items such as lipsticks and headphones inside, as well as a vehicle insurance contract stuffed inside, but there were no self-defense weapons. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Second Monster. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Second Monster. Gu Manyao also searched in the back seat but couldn't find anything. Wang Xuan focused on driving the car, his eyes occasionally looking left and right. He is not driving fast, looking at the road while driving, hoping to find his way out. On both sides, a large number of parked vehicles could be seen, and load-bearing pillars could be seen one after another. As he drove forward, he suddenly stepped on the brake and stopped the car. Because the car was parked urgently, several people in the car leaned forward. Zhao Lei was surprised and said, so what's going on? Wang Xuan looked to the left and said, I remember I drove from Zone F to Zone E, and I drove straight along here without turning on the way. It's impossible to return to Zone F, but now we're back in Zone F. Zhao Lei looked over and also found the words F-Zone on the load-bearing pillar on the left side of the car. Gu Manyao said, Wang Xuan, do you mean our car has been circling between Zone F and Zone E just now? Wang Xuan restarted the car and said, I don't know, I'll try again. As he spoke, he reached out and wiped away the slight sweat oozing from his forehead. The situation has become increasingly eerie, and the air inside the car seems to have solidified. Everyone's mood has become heavier and heavier. If the car cannot be driven out, what should be done next? What is waiting for them? Zhao Lei and the three women kept taking out their respective phones, hoping to make a call. Unfortunately, now all of their phones have become a decoration, with no signal, let alone contacting the outside world. Wang Xuan glanced at the dashboard of the car, which originally showed that the fuel level could still drive 190 kilometers, but now it has increased to 160 kilometers, indicating that he has driven a full 30 kilometers in this underground parking lot. However, when he stopped the car again, the load-bearing column next to it showed that they were still in Zone F. This time, not only Wang Xuan, but also Zhao Lei and Gu Manyao looked carefully on the way. As Wang Xuan said, they constantly saw E-Zone on the load-bearing pillar, then turned into F-Zone, and then E-Zone and F-Zone. So they returned, as if their car was shuttling back and forth between these two zones, but the car had always been driving in a straight line without any turning or changing direction. What underground parking lot can be 30 kilometers long? Wang Xiansong let go, and the steering wheel was covered in sweat from his palm. Wang Xuan, will we never be able to leave? Zhang Qianwen's voice rang out, and she was about to cry again. Zhang Qianwen, there's nothing to be afraid of. We can definitely go out. Although Wang Qin was injured quite lightly, she appeared much calmer compared to the anxious Zhang Qianwen. The more times it is, the more we need to remain calm. Wang Xuan, since there is no way out by driving forward, we can try to change direction, find a new path, and see if we can get out. Gu Manyao put forward her own opinion. Wang Xuan nodded, he also had this idea. Rubbing the palm of his right hand with his left hand, although he was driving with all his heart and searching for a way out, the swelling sensation of foreign objects in the palm of his right hand did not disappear. The indescribable discomfort of something being propped up in his skin and flesh made him have an impulse several times to find a sharp knife, cut open the palm, and dig out the white scales inside. I just can't find a sharp knife now. Next, he chose to turn left, changed direction, and drove along the left road. This underground parking lot looks very large, filled with various cars, with crisscrossing roads between them. Normally, there should be above-ground signs or road signs indicating exits in this underground parking lot, but now these signs or road signs seem bizarre and disappear. Without these signs, they are like headless flies that can only be observed while driving. This time, Wang Xuan only drove for a few minutes before coming to a stop. He saw from a distance that the road ahead was blocked by a car flipping upside down. This sedan was severely damaged, with several parts of the body collapsing and the window glass shattered, indicating that it had suffered a violent impact. Wang Xuan stared at the car that was blocking their way from afar, frowning slightly. Zhao Lei, who was sitting in the passenger seat, suddenly exclaimed, "Isn't this my car?" As he spoke, he took out his car key and pressed it. The overturned headlights flickered twice, and it turned out to be his new energy vehicle. The three women sitting behind all widened their eyes and showed an incredible expression. There's such a thing. Gu Manyao pursed her lips. It's over. We've been circling around here, we're stuck here and can't get out anymore. Zhao Lei was like a deflated ball, limping onto the seat, his face pale as paper. Wang Xian's expression was also very ugly. He had driven in the opposite direction for 30 kilometers before, and then drove all the way to the left for a few minutes. Normally, it was impossible for him to return to the starting point. At this moment, suddenly there was a soft thud from the top of the carriage, as if something had fallen on it. The 5 people inside the car had a heart skip and their faces changed. Zhang Qianwen trembled and said, "Did that sound just now?" She dared not say the following words anymore, but her face was about to cry. Wang Xuan remained silent and immediately backed the car back. He backs up very quickly, and if there is really something on the roof, he wants to use this speed to shake it off. Wang Xuan stepped on the gas pedal and the car made a loud noise. It accelerated and fell backwards, but nothing was thrown off the roof. Suddenly, a loud bang came from the rear windshield behind. This voice almost sounded in the ears of the 3 women behind her. Suddenly, Zhang Qianwen was scared and let out a scream. Wang Qin's face changed, but she controlled and not to shout out. Gu Manyao's face slightly changed color and she turned her head to look back. Wang Xuan used the rearview mirror in the car to see an indistinct black figure on the rear windshield, covered in black scales all over his body, except for a white scale at the center of his neck. He immediately thought of the monster covered in scales that they had killed in Zhao Lei's car before. It seemed that Zhao Lei was right. There was not only one monster in this eerie underground parking lot. This monster's feet were like barbs, tightly grasping the trunk lid of the car, stabilizing its body, and swinging one of its forelimbs to hit a corner of the windshield in front of it. Countless cracks resembling spider webs appeared on the surface of this rear windshield. Wang Xuan, quickly move forward and shake it off. Gu Manyao turned her head to look at the back, only through one side of the glass, and came into close contact with the monster. She looked at the eerie beast eyes with a faint green light and understood the terrifying power of the monster. With just a few more hits, she could completely break through the rear windshield and enter the car to attack them. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Vans, for follow.up reading, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Vans, for follow.up reading, although she was shocked, she was not flustered. She immediately thought of this monster crawling onto the rear windshield, and Wang Xuan reversed it, unable to shake it off. Needless to say, Wang Xuan's thoughts were the same as hers. When he noticed the monster scratching the rear windshield, he shifted the gear to forward, almost pressing the accelerator all the way and turning the direction to the right. A roaring sound sounded, and the rear of the red sedan was almost thrown out horizontally. The scaly monster behind it was lifting its right paw, wanting to continue hitting the rear windshield, when it was thrown out. The monster was thrown out of the air, landing heavily on the ground, rolling against the ground and emitting a faint roar, filled with ferocity, violence, and anger. Wang Xuan was completely engrossed, tightly gripping the steering wheel with both hands. The car turned almost 90 degrees at a right angle and rushed towards the right lane. The body of the car tilted severely, and several people inside felt like they were about to be thrown out. The 3 women squeezed together, and Zhang Qianwen screamed. That monster was thrown down. Zhao Lei kept turning his head to look behind him, only to find that the monster had been thrown out and exclaimed excitedly. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Wang Xuan suddenly felt a flash in front of him. A van turned around the corner and was colliding with them. Suddenly, he was shocked and quickly stepped on the brake. The driver of this van also immediately noticed Wang Xuan's red sedan and applied emergency brakes. Although both sides stepped on the brakes, Wang Xuan's car was too fast and the distance between them was too short to stop. With a loud bang, the 2 cars collided, causing the front of the car to sink in. The sound of broken car headlights sounded, and Wang Xuan noticed that the front cover of his car was slightly bulging upwards. Fortunately, this collision was not too violent. Wang Xuan could be certain that he had not seen this van before, and the other party appeared out of thin air. He flashed through the words of the female driver in his mind and understood that the situation where Zhao Lei's car was overturned before had reappeared. The time and space of this underground parking lot could no longer be explained by common sense. The front ends of the 2 cars collided, and both cars came to a stop. The door of the van was pushed open from inside. Wang Xuan thought of the monster that had just been thrown away. Although it was thrown away, it should not have been injured and may reappear. The danger has not been relieved. He pushed the gear back to reverse, preparing to reverse and make a U-turn to escape again, while also wanting to remind the van driver of the danger. At this moment, he realized that not only the driver had opened the car door and come down, but the back door had also opened. 4 people followed closely behind, all cursing and wielding weapons such as steel pipe swinging sticks, with a fierce and imposing face, and surrounded their car. Wang Xuan looked at the van driver and 5 people coming down from behind, all young men. Except for the driver who appeared slightly normal, 2 of the 4 people coming down from behind were dyed with yellow hair, one bald, and the other had long hair tied in a small braid. Tattoos were visible on their arms and necks, making them the kind of hooligans and thugs. Get off the car quickly, are you driving so fast in the parking lot? Are you in a hurry to get reincarnated? The van driver approached Wang Xuan's car and reached out, slamming heavily on the front cover with an angry expression on his face. Until now, he had not figured out where the red sedan in front of him came from. Suddenly, it collided at lightning speed, and he almost suspected that Wang Xuan had intentionally collided. A bald man in the back held the steel pipe in his right hand and tapped his left hand gently, saying, "It's really his mother unlucky. Brother Airplane asked us to help. Unexpectedly, there was an accident when he left. Bah, unlucky. Although it may sound unlucky on the lips, it is in my heart that I want to extort a sum." Wang Xuan saw these 5 fierce and evil people surrounding him, not only not afraid, but also relieved. Being in this eerie and terrifying underground parking lot, suddenly seeing these 5 people holding weapons, he felt a sense of security in his heart. A large number of people represents safety. He was about to open the car window to speak when he suddenly noticed the left rearview mirror from the corner of his eye. He saw a black figure covered in scales in the rearview mirror, approaching at an extremely fast speed. Not good, there are monsters, be careful. Before Wang Xuan could finish speaking, he saw a huge black figure suddenly rising through the window glass, almost against the left side of the red sedan's body, pouncing on the van driver standing in front of the left front of the car. Suddenly, the driver of the van was staring at Wang Xuan and the others inside the car. Before he could understand what was happening, he felt like he was hit by a huge force. He couldn't stop his body and fell out diagonally, barely turning his head. He saw a pair of green eyes and a big mouth full of blood at that moment. His mind was blank and he couldn't think of anything. He felt his throat tighten and he couldn't breathe or speak. A severe pain from his throat being torn open surged up, and he instinctively let out a scream. In a scream, his eyes turned black, and then he felt his spine hit the ground heavily. After that, he knew nothing. Suddenly encountering an accident, the other 4 originally ferocious thugs were all shocked and stared in disbelief. They saw the van driver lying on the ground with a wolf-headed ape on its body, covered in black scales. With a flick of its head, the monster tore open the van driver's throat, almost half of which was bitten off, and a large amount of blood spurted out. There are monsters. The thug with a small braid let out a scream, and the monster's 4 paws thrust towards the ground, almost soaring into the air. A diagonal dive hit one of the yellow-haired thugs holding a baseball bat. The yellow-haired thug let out hoarse howls in his mouth, his face twisted with fear, and the baseball bat he was holding in his right hand wanted to be swung out. However, this monster was too fast and powerful for ordinary people to fight against. He didn't have time to struggle and resist being knocked down by the monster's attack. With a snap, his neck was bitten in by 2 rows of sharp teeth. Watching the yellow-haired thug also be knocked down, the remaining 3 thugs were shocked but reacted. Another tall yellow-haired thug let out a roar and didn't turn around to escape. Instead, he waved his steel pipe and threw it at the monster. Huang Mao, who was knocked down by the monster, is his cousin. The 2 of them are relatives and have never loved learning since childhood. They grew up together and have a great relationship. Due to his tall stature and being 2 years older, he is called Big Huang Mao, while the other is called Little Huang Mao. Seeing his cousin Xiao Wangmiao being knocked down by a monster, he rushed forward without hesitation. With a loud bang, the steel pipe fell down, but the monster lifted its head and opened its big mouth to bite it. A claw extended out and swung fiercely. Rhubarb's hair let out a mournful scream, and his face was scratched by claws, immediately revealing 4 blood grooves. Each blood groove was deeply visible to the bone, and even his eyeballs were scratched out, hanging on his face in an extremely miserable state. Thank you to all the friends who rewarded me. Thank you to the first helmsman in this book. Yimeng Hongchen. As for your reward list, we will open a separate chapter. Thank you. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Unable to leave. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Unable to leave. The little yellow hare that had been knocked down before, whose throat had been torn open, was bubbling with blood foam, and could not live. The remaining bald and braided men originally watched as de Huang Mao charged up with a steel pipe. They wanted to follow suit and attack the monster, but in just the blink of an eye, de Huang Mao's face was caught in this terrifying sight, especially the appearance of the tendons attached to his eyeballs hanging on his face, which frightened them to the point of splitting their hearts. They turned around and fled. They are not stupid, they can see that this monster is moving extremely fast, and the only chance to survive is to escape into the van, and only by driving can they possibly escape here alive. The brave man was closest to the van, turned around and rushed into the driver's cab with just 1 arrow step, then closed the car door. The bald man rushed up to the sliding door in the middle of the van a step later than him. Just as he closed it halfway, the scaly monster rushed forward like a tiger from a box. Baldy let out a scream full of fear, gripping the steel pipe in his hands and fighting desperately. With a loud bang, the steel pipe failed to hit the monster's head, but instead hit slightly off its shoulder. The monster groaned slightly, protected by black scales on its shoulders. It only felt pain this time. It let out a low roar, grabbed the car door frame with its claws, rushed forward, and along with the steel pipe, collided with the bald head, falling into the van. All of this is a long story, but in reality, it only took a few seconds. Wang Xuan sat in the red sedan and witnessed all of this happening. The shock in his heart was unimaginable. He did not expect that 5 young men with weapons would be easily killed in a row, and the remaining 2 would escape into the van, which was probably more or less ominous. At this moment, he realized how lucky he was to have killed that scaly monster before. He had already pushed the gear lever to reverse gear, almost pressing the accelerator to the bottom, but he didn't want it to just make a loud noise and the car wouldn't move at all. Just collided with a van and I don't know where it malfunctioned. Now the car can't move. He was about to push the gear lever to forward and try again, but he didn't want the car to suddenly stall, and there was no response afterwards. Zhao Lei saw the monster collide with the bald man and rush into the van, followed closely by the van shaking violently. Inside, the bald man and the braided man roared fiercely, accompanied by the monster's terrifying low roar. Obviously, the bald and braided man was not instantly killed by the monster, but fought fiercely against it inside the van. Wang Xuan, let's go quickly. Listening to the roars of monsters coming from the van, Zhao Lei's heart was cold and he whispered. Although it was unjust to escape now, facing such a terrifying monster, they were unarmed and couldn't muster the courage to get out of the car to help the bald and braided man. The only thing they could do was take this opportunity to drive away from here. The car is broken and cannot start. Wang Xuan took a deep breath. Zhao Lei's heart trembled and he looked at him. Both of them had average ugly faces, and the 3 women behind them also heard Wang Xuan's words. Zhang Qianwen trembled and said, "Is the car broken?" "So. What should we do?" She was already scared to tears. Although they sat in the back row and didn't see as clearly as Wang Xuan and Zhao Lei, the screams of the van driver and Huang Mao being killed were all heard clearly. Even if Gu Manyao was brave and Wang Qin had a strong personality, their faces were pale as paper and their whole bodies were trembling slightly. Zhao Lei hesitated and said, "Why don't we take this opportunity to abandon the car and escape? Otherwise, we'll all be finished when that monster comes out." Gu Manyao said, "No, this monster is faster than us. If we abandon the car, it will soon catch up with us. It's better to stay in the car and use the space in the car, maybe we can still compete with it." Wang Xuan remained silent, just staring at the van silently. He understood that Gu Manyao had a point. Now he abandoned the van and fled. Once the monster killed all the people in the van, it would quickly catch up with them and kill them all with its speed. It's better to hide in the car. The carriage is narrow, and if 5 people sit inside, squeezing in another monster will make it even more crowded, making it difficult to move. If this monster wants to kill them, it needs to enter the carriage. Not only is its speed severely limited, but its power cannot be fully exerted due to limited space. In this case, they have an advantage in a 1:1 relationship. Previously, he was able to kill that monster for this reason, which can be said to be their only advantage at present. Suddenly, a very mournful scream came from inside the van. A few people heard it and understood that another person had died, but they didn't hear whether it was the bald or the braided man's voice. Then came the monster's faint roar, and then the low roar disappeared. The van, which was originally violently vibrating, quieted down. A few people understood that the monster should have killed both the bald man and the braided man. The next step was probably their turn, but they had no choice but to wait in the car. Although Wang Xuan and Zhao Lei saw weapons such as steel pipes and baseball bats on the ground not far outside the car, they dared not get off the car to pick them up. The surroundings of this underground parking lot are becoming increasingly dark, and no one knows if there are any other monsters hidden in the darkness. Moreover, if they just get off the car and the monster that rushed into the van suddenly rushes out, it will be troublesome. In the open space, the few thugs with weapons just now are not opponents of this monster, let alone them. The sound inside the van completely disappeared, and the surroundings became as silent as death. Wang Xuan could vaguely feel his intense heartbeat, and he could also hear Zhao Lei's somewhat heavy breathing. The silence lasted for about 10 seconds, when suddenly the sliding door of the van moved and a figure covered in blood rolled out of the car. Wang Xuan's face flashed with a hint of strangeness. He could see that the man rolling down from the sliding door was the braided man with a braid. His whole body was covered in blood. After falling down, he lay there, looking up at his right palm, muttering something vaguely in his mouth. Zhao Lei had an incredulous expression on his face. Gu Manyao from behind extended her head and looked ahead through the windshield, with a hint of surprise, saying, "He's not dead. What about that monster?" Zhao Lei said, "Did he, like Wang Xuan, also kill that monster?" Wang Xuan didn't speak, but noticed a small detail. The braid man was lying on the ground, lifting his arm and staring at his right palm, while his left hand was still rubbing in the palm. He looked very familiar with this action, thinking of killing the monster before. A white scale cut through the palm of his right hand and entered it. He was also looking at his right palm at the time, wishing to use his left hand to open the wound on his right palm and remove the white scale. Unfortunately, the wound on his right palm healed in the blink of an eye. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Second scale. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Second scale. Did he really kill that monster and also get white scales? Wang Xian's heart twitched, and he couldn't help but grip his right hand. The swelling sensation in his palm grew stronger and stronger. Since the monster appeared and hunted these thugs, a subtle reaction occurred on the white scales in his right palm, which made his right palm even more uncomfortable. It was not only swollen and hot, but also itching from the flesh of his right palm to the skin, causing him an indescribable discomfort. At this moment, he was constantly rubbing his right palm with his left hand to alleviate this discomfort. The braided man lying on the ground, looking at his right hand, quickly stood up again, his face pale and frightening, and walked unsteadily towards Wang Xuan and the others. Wang Xuan and Zhao Lei were still sitting in the car, watching as the braided man quickly approached their side. Take me. Take me one, let me get in the car. The man with braids no longer had the ferocity he had before on his face. Although he tried his best to appear calm, Wang Xuan could see the panic and fear in his eyes, as well as a hint of pleading. As he spoke, he wanted to open the back door and get into the car, but because the door was locked, he did not open it. The braid man didn't know that the red car was no longer able to start, and now he just wanted to escape from here with Wang Xuan and a few others in this car. Wang Xuan opened the car door and said, "We all got off the car." As he spoke, he quickly got off the car. Just now, he observed around and didn't see any new monsters in the visible area. Finally, he mustered the courage to get off the car. This car is broken, let's charter a car up there. Wang Xuan quickly ran towards the van while speaking. Zhao Lei, Gu Manyao, Wang Qin, and Zhang Qianwen all opened the car door and got off. The braided man was stunned and then realized why the red sedan had been parked here and could not be started. It turned out that the car was broken and could not be started. After listening to Wang Xian's words, he was stunned and quickly turned around to run towards the van. Wang Xuan was the first to rush to the sliding door of the van, and at a glance, he saw blood splattering everywhere in the van. His bald body twisted and lay motionless on the middle seat, probably dead. The scaly monster lay on its back, with its open mouth revealing only the tail end of a steel pipe. A large amount of blood flowed from his mouth, his eyes wide open, and he had lost his breath. Wang Xuan noticed that the white scale in the center of its neck had disappeared. It seemed that he had guessed correctly. This white scale should have entered the palm of the braided man's right hand. Following closely behind Zhao Lei and Gu Manyao, they also rushed over and quickly dragged the bald and monster bodies from the van together. The braid man watched their movements and followed them into the driver's cabin to sit down. Wang Xuan and Zhao Lei, the five of them, removed the bald and monster corpses and entered the van one after another, closing the sliding door. Entering the car, everyone breathed a light sigh, and Wang Xuan immediately said to the braided man, "Drive quickly, get out of here first." The braid man tried to start the van repeatedly, but soon looked dejected and said, "I can't drive it anymore." Jia Laosan's van was originally a fifth-rate truck and was about to be scrapped. Before it collided, he often stalled halfway. Just now, he was hit by your car, which can be considered completely scrapped. Listening to the braid man's words, Wang Xuan and Zhao Lei looked at each other in confusion. Unexpectedly, the red sedan could not start, and now the van was also scrapped, causing trouble. "You don't know how to repair a car, do you?" Zhao Lei asked, and neither he nor Wang Xuan knew how to repair a car. Now they are counting on this braid man. The braid man shook his head and said, "Jia Laosan understands a little bit. I wouldn't know how to fix it. If he were here, maybe he could fix it, but he already." As he spoke, he looked through the front windshield of the van and saw a corpse not far ahead. That body is the van driver, who is Jia Laosan in his mouth. It's done, there's still a glimmer of hope to escape from here while driving. If we don't have a car, what should we do? Zhao Lei's eyes showed a hint of despair. Even if we encounter that monster while staying in the car, there is still a chance for a glimmer of resistance. If we get off the car, in an open place, they are not enough to fight against that monster. You. Tell me quickly, what's going on? That monster. What's that monster? The braid man rubbed his right palm as he spoke, as if there was something in his right palm that made him feel uncomfortable. Wang Xuan looked at him and said, "Did a white scale enter the palm of your right hand?" The braid man was taken aback before nodding and saying, "Yes." "Do you know what's going on?" Wang Xuan took a soft breath, and as he had guessed, the white scale seemed to be the key. Based on the information he had obtained so far, it was possible to kill a monster and obtain a white scale. Wang Xuan didn't hide it anymore and said, like you, I also killed a monster and obtained a white scale. White scales, what white scales? Zhao Lei asked, and neither he nor Gu Manyao nor Wang Qin knew about white scales. Wang Xuan shared his previous experience of obtaining white scales, and Zhao Lei and the four of them listened with an incredulous expression on their faces. There's such a thing, white scales that can parasitize the human body. They can also accelerate wound healing, Zhao Lei murmured, then reached out and pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose. His squinting eyes almost narrowed into a slit, indicating that he was thinking. The braid man looked at Wang Xuan, Dao. Your situation is similar to mine. Before going bald, I inserted the steel pipe in my hand into the monster's mouth. I thought I was dead, so I thought I would drag this monster with me to die. I also grabbed the steel pipe from behind and poked it into the monster's mouth. Later, I don't know when the monster died. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in the back of my right hand, and a white scale cut the back of my right hand. After that, it was the same as your situation. The film penetrated through the back of my right hand, and the wound on the back of my hand healed in the blink of an eye. Wang Xuan nodded slightly. The situation of the braided man was very similar to his own, the only difference being that he had been cut in the palm of his right hand, while the braided man had the back of his hand. You have obtained this white scale, and the wound will heal in the blink of an eye. Even if you are seriously injured, it will heal instantly. The white scale. Zhao Lei squinted his eyes wide, revealing a look of longing. The braid man suddenly seemed to think of something and was busy touching his chest. By the way, my chest was caught by the monster's claws, and I remember the wound was very deep. As he spoke, he peeled off his torn shirt and exposed his chest, realizing that several terrifying wounds on his chest skin had scabbed. Although they did not heal as quickly as the wound on his right back, the ability to recover from the injury was astonishing. There is a power outage during the day, which is even later. We apologize for any inconvenience caused. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Zhang Haofei. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Zhang Haofei. Such a serious wound has scarred in such a short period of time. If that were the case, wouldn't I not have died? The braid man was both surprised and delighted. Zhao Lei said more seriously, it should be difficult to die, not impossible. I don't know your name yet. Wang Xuan looked at the braid man. My name is Zhang Haofei, and what about you? Wang Xuan and Zhao Lei also mentioned their names. What should we do next? Stay in the car or get off? Zhang Haofei asked. Zhao Lei said, both of these cars are broken. Staying in the car is not a solution. Apart from that, just eating and drinking is a big problem. Everyone was constantly in a state of great terror, unable to feel hunger and thirst for a moment. When Zhao Lei mentioned eating and drinking, Wang Xuan and others suddenly felt a dry mouth and a hungry stomach. Wang Xuan took out his phone and glanced at the time. In this dark underground parking lot, he could hardly feel the passage of time. In fact, it was already 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and they had been trapped in this underground parking lot for 3 hours. Wang Xuan had a tea egg in the morning. Now when Zhao Lei talked about eating and drinking, he immediately felt hungry. He smiled bitterly and said, you are right. I feel thirsty and hungry now. If we can't find something to eat, we won't last long. Zhang Haofei interjected, don't worry about drinking for now. I remembered Jia Laosan had a box of mineral water in the back of his car. As he spoke, he lifted himself from the driver's seat and turned his head to point towards the back, letting the 3 women sitting behind look for him. Got it, there's mineral water here. Gu Manyao quickly found the box of mineral water placed at the back. Zhang Qianwen stretched back to get the mineral water, and the 2 women took out bottles of mineral water and distributed them among the people in the car. Wang Xuan took a bottle of mineral water from Gu Manyao's hand. He was already dry-lipped, unscrewed the bottle cap, and took a big sip. After drinking enough water, his hunger subsided slightly and he said, "It seems we still need to find some food to eat. With so many cars parked here, I don't believe every car is empty. We should be able to find some snacks and the like to satisfy our hunger." Zhao Lei threw away the mineral water bottle he had drunk in his hand and said, "From the current situation, if we continue to stay in this car, there is only one dead end. As time goes on, without food to replenish, we will become increasingly weak. Not to mention hunting monsters, we must first starve to death. We must find a way to find food when we are still physically strong." As soon as he said this, Zhang Haofei had already opened the driver's door and was the first to walk down. "No matter how much discussion we have now, it's useless. Why don't everyone take some practical action and come down quickly to find food? With so many cars here, we can always find food." As he spoke, he walked over to the corpse of little yellow hair on the ground and picked up a baseball bat. "This guy is quite bold," Zhao Lei whispered softly. After learning about the special effect of white scales, Zhang Haofei's courage suddenly increased a lot. Since it is difficult to die, what else is there to be afraid of? Wang Xuan said, "Everyone, let's go down. Zhao Lei is right. If we continue to stay in this car, there is only one dead end. We must find a way to find food." As he spoke, he pushed open the sliding door of the car and got off. When he saw the body of the monster on the ground, he grabbed the steel pipe that only exposed the tail from the monster's mouth, stepped on the body, and forcefully pulled it out with both hands. Since this steel pipe can be inserted into the monster's mouth to kill it, its tip should be sharpened very sharply. In Wang Xuan's opinion, this sharpened steel pipe is more effective than a stick in dealing with this monster covered with scales. The steel pipe was inserted very deeply, and it was not easy to pull it out. Wang Xuan grabbed the tail of the steel pipe with both hands, and when he exerted force, he felt that the steel pipe was stuck deep inside the monster's body, almost motionless, and even with all his strength, it was difficult to pull it out. Just as he was about to give up, he suddenly noticed some changes in his swollen and itchy right hand, perhaps due to excessive force. Within this swollen and itchy right hand, he could feel the change in the white scale, as if it was slowly wriggling in his flesh, emitting a faint heat. This kind of heat appeared, and the originally motionless steel pipe suddenly moved, making a soft hiss sound. The steel pipe, carrying a blood arrow, was pulled out of the monster's body by him. Looking at the pulled-out steel pipe, Wang Xuan tightly grasped his right hand, sensing the changes in the white scales inside his palm. It seems that these white scales can not only accelerate the healing of injured wounds, but also enhance strength. I don't know if there are any other effects. This discovery surprised and delighted Wang Xuan. What surprised him was that the white scales looked like living creatures, and the feeling of moving in his palms was chilling. What pleased him was that their special effects were far more powerful than he had imagined. Zhang Haofei opened the trunk of the van, lifted the remaining half of the box of mineral water, and then took out a 1-meter-long steel bar, 2 steel rods, and a machete from it. Seeing Zhao Lei looking at him with a strange expression on his face, Zhang Haofei chuckled and said, "There's nothing strange. We've been fighting since childhood, and it's not uncommon to have these things in our cars. But now we basically don't really do anything about them. We're just using them to scare people. We call them what they're called. Yes, we can't defeat people without fighting. We're strictly controlling now, and the cost of fighting is too high. Let's all pick out the items. In case another monster appears, you shouldn't have to deal with it bare-handed," Zhang Haofei said as he took out all the weapons from the trunk and threw them to the ground. Zhao Lei and Gu Manyao also got off the car. He took a liking to the machete, but found it light and floating in his hand. The blade was too soft and had little killing power. In actual combat, he was afraid it might not be as good as a steel rod. Throwing down the machete, Zhao Lei replaced it with a steel rod. Gu Manyao took a steel bar with a sharpened head, Zhang Qianwen took a steel pipe, and although Wang Qin was weak, he also picked a steel rod that was over 1 meter long, but she used it as a crutch. Seeing that everyone was armed, Zhang Haofei, holding a baseball bat, walked towards the nearest off-road vehicle and said, "Then let's quickly find food." As he spoke, he walked to the driver's cab of the off-road vehicle, gripping the baseball bat with both hands and smashing it fiercely towards a corner of the window glass. Zhang Haofei was very fast and seemed to have smashed people's car windows before. He was very skilled in his movements and quickly smashed the window glass of the off-road vehicle. He reached in, opened the driver's door, and then opened the trunk from inside. Wang Xuan walked towards a parked sedan next to the off-road vehicle with a steel pipe in his hand, imitating Zhang Haofei's style and smashing it against the window glass. End of this chapter.